Internets, make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend. The Premium Pete Show live tour is going on, and the next stop is November 15th in Philadelphia, 6 to 9 p.m. Man, it's going to be a movie. Special guests, sounds, food, vibes. Man, who knows who's going to stop by? It's at the WeWork Northern Liberties, and it's sponsored by my good friends Jason Mark, the best shoe cleaner in the game, Gorillo's Pickles, the best pickles in the game, and Suplex Philadelphia, the best sneaker shop in Philadelphia. Okay? I want you to be there, and if you're not from there, tell a friend who's from Philadelphia or even close by. Say, listen, November 15th, WeWork presents the Premium Pete Show live tour in Philadelphia, 6 to 9 p.m. More info will be either on Twitter, there'll be an RSVP link, or my Instagram bio. Pay attention to that. But now, head into this episode. This was on the road. This is when I was in Atlanta during A3C Festival. As soon as I got off the plane, went right to the legendary Kendall Minter's office. To me, one of the most powerful entertainment lawyers in the game. Okay? I want to give a big shout out to my man Newbie, a.k.a. Buttery OG, for providing the portable sound for us to do this on the road. This is the second time I ever did this on the road. The first time was the legendary Travis Grillo Pickle episode, which is a fan favorite. I also want to give a shout out to my father-in-law to be the great Nat Robinson from First Priority Music. I mean, he helped set this up, and Kendall's a good friend to him. And we just really went to that office and chopped it up, man. I'm so excited for you to hear this. My man Isaiah put this together, Tigarachi. Man, it was a great time in Atlanta, man. I also had the live show over there. Man, let me stop talking, and let's get to this legendary Kendall Minter episode. Let me tell you something. If you're a lawyer and you want to learn more about the business, or if you're a lawyer to be, or if you have any inkling in your mind, like, yo, I would love to work as an entertainment lawyer. If you listen to this episode, I promise you, you'll have so many jewels that it will further your life and your career. And thank me later. And thank Kendall Minter. I don't know if he's on social media, but let's get to the episode. Internets, I present to you the Kendall Minter episode. Cheer.
Come on, everybody get set, let's go. It's the next episode. It's the Premium Pete Show. News, interviews, all of the info. Listen up, it's the Premium Pete Show. If you want the scoop in the low, down low, listen to the show, cause Milk said so. Fuck what you heard, better act like you know. It's the Premium Pete Show.
Internets, welcome back to another episode of the Premium Pete Show. I'm honored to be sitting here with the legendary Kendall Minter. Okay? Now, Kendall, okay, right off the bat, when was the first thought that you wanted to do anything in this world growing up? Like, I'm sure when you were young, you didn't want to be just a lawyer off the bat.
No.
What did you want to be as a kid?
Same thing most folks. I want to be a fireman. Hop on the truck, save people. You know, you see it racing down the street, so it looked like an exciting job. Not thinking about all of the peril that it involved.
Sure.
So when I kind of learned about that, I said, I'm not doing this. Could be something that's cleaner, easier, and that I can affect more people. So I just went to school, and, you know, as I kind of got into undergrad, got on the pre-law path, studied government and poli-sci as a major, did a lot of entertainment stuff on the side to make some dough, and then went to law school.
Well, let's take it back for a second. You grew up in Brooklyn?
No,
I'm
a native of St. Albans, Queens.
Okay, Queens. Grew up in Queens.
The land of Count Basie and Lionel Hampton and Muhammad Ali and James Brown.
You ever meet Muhammad Ali?
Yeah, I did. Actually, the first time I met him was actually on Linden Boulevard in St. Albans.
Really? How'd that happen?
He was Cassius Clay then.
Okay.
So that dates me. Yeah, but that was the first opportunity. I rode up there on my bike with a whole bunch of motherhood rats. Met Cassius Clay coming out of a house.
Did he say anything to you, or just
he said, "Hey kids, how y'all doing?"
Yeah, be good, y'all.
He was real gracious.
Okay,
and he lived right down the street from Count Basie. But that was the first encounter.
Yeah. You know, when you think about someone becoming successful later on in life, you know, how many friends of yours that you grew up with have become successful? Did they join you, or a lot of them just fell off?
To be honest, most of the cats I grew up with, probably half of them are dead or in jail. And that's why, you know, when I was in high school, I decided not to go to school in my neighborhood. So if I'd stayed in Jamaica and St. Albans area, I would have gone to Andrew Jackson High School. But I saw where my boys were going. So, we were running the streets. We were stupid.
Sure.
And some of them, got hooked on drugs. A couple got killed. So I'm like, I got to get out of the neighborhood.
You said that to yourself?
Yeah.
Not your parents?
I said that to myself. I'm like, if I'm going to make it, I got to not go to high school because I'll be hanging out with my boys. Because I knew the kind of stuff we were doing, which was just stupid. Not stupid criminal, just stupid.
Sure. Now, you grew up with mom and dad?
Yeah.
What did mom do?
So, I mean, they're all from New York. So I was born in Corona, Queens, and Jamaica Hospital, and then moved to St. Albans when I was 5 years old and stayed there essentially until I went off to college.
And mom did, what was her profession?
She was a teacher.
Okay.
So she was initially a teacher, and then after that she was a professor at LaGuardia Community College in New York teaching psychology, and she was an administrator. My dad was a engineer, aerospace engineer. So he worked for Fairchild Industries out of Long Island, and he did that for many, many years until he moved to Connecticut and worked for Sikorsky. And at Sikorsky, he ran a Black Hawk program for the Army.
Did you have a good relationship with Pops?
Yep. Still do.
Oh, nice.
Mom's gone, but Pops is still around, living with my younger brother in Northern Virginia. And he's 87th, knock on wood. Yeah, I got livable genes.
When you were growing up, would you say that you were a middle-class family, or, did you have, Yeah,
we were definitely middle class. We weren't struggling. Okay. I can't go back and say, it was hard times, didn't know where the next meal was coming from, and got evicted. We didn't really have any of that. But at the same time, we weren't blinging.
Sure.
So I had to pay for my own first car, which I spent $75 on.
Yeah, wait, what'd you buy for $75?
It was a Fiat, man, a four-door Fiat that was falling apart.
How'd you fit in that?
It was four of us. I mean, four-door, and I would take all my crew, and we would roll up to school. I went to school at Flushing High School, which is how I got out of the neighborhood. And I got out of the neighborhood on a zoning variance by saying I wanted to study Russian. That was the only way I could get out of the neighborhood. And they taught Russian at Flushing High School.
How did you hear about that?
I just did some research. I was looking at it, what do you need to do to go to a high school outside your neighborhood? There had to be special circumstances and get what they call a variance. So my variance was, I want to study Russian. I didn't study a lick of Russian, but I said I wanted to study Russian, so I got admitted into Flushing High School. So I commuted every day, first on the train, and then, after a few years, by the time I got to my senior year, bought me a $75 Fiat. Drove to school every day like some hot shit.
I couldn't even think about $75 for a car that's actually working.
That was back in a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I know. You don't.
A couple of years ago.
I asked you about Pops because, obviously you say middle-class family.
Yeah.
But, and we'll go over your career, but being, an entertainment lawyer or being a bunch of other things, professor, and we'll get into that. But you obviously were probably more successful than your father monetary-wise, Did you ever get a chance to buy him something that really stuck out or do something for him with your success?
Nothing in the sense of financial gifts. Just, thank yous by way of Christmas stuff and holidays and birthday gifts and, picking up a tab on dinner when we would go out. And even now, since he's been retired for many years, just, he lives in Virginia, bringing him down to hang out with us in Stone Mountain for a couple of weeks and just making sure everything's
drink some
smoothly.
wine.
Yeah.
Smoke some cigars.
He loves wine. I got to slow him down because he drinks wine like people drink water. It's like, all right.
Listen, they say wine helps you when you get older. You believe in that?
I'm drinking it every day just to make sure I'll be fine when I get older.
When you were young, right? Mm-hmm. In your teenage years, did you have good credit? Were you aware of that?
I know shit about credit.
Yeah.
You need credit when we were young. I mean, it was cash and carry. Didn't even have a credit card until I went to college. So now it was all straight cash, and I worked. So I worked from the time I was in junior high school. So I would get on a train, go down to West 8th Street in Greenwich Village.
Yep.
Work part time after school.
Where were you working?
I worked at a place called the American Youth Hostels.
Okay.
And it's an organization, it's a global organization, the International Youth Hostel Federation. And basically, it's an organization that is about educating folks through travel. And you learn through traveling. So, we would backpack or cycle all around the U.S., all around the world, over to Europe, wherever it might be. So they had an organization, the headquarters for New York was down in the Village. And, so I kind of joined the organization, got involved in that, and worked at the store and headquarters, and Monday through Friday I'd be on the train hanging out in the Village.
one thing I find funny is that like when people are working when they're young, it's like you really don't know what's next, but you're working. Sometimes you could have the inkling that like, hey, man, I may be stuck here for a long time. Some people, think bigger than that and then make it happen. Did you always see a bigger vision of what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, I just looked at that really as a chance to, one, go on some trips for free. Because as an employee, I didn't have to pay for the trips.
Sure. It's like your Sky Miles back then.
Yeah, you say Sky Miles was like bike miles.
Sure.
So we go, somewhere by bus, pull out our bikes, bike around, Penn Dutch country or into Vermont or somewhere for the weekend, go skiing or whatever it might be. But it was all about outdoor travel on your own engine and steam. So I did that so I could make some money, do some free travel, and just have a bunch of good times with some good friends. And that's what I did all throughout junior high school and early into the high school years until it was time to get serious about going to college.
And you went to Cornell, right?
Cornell, yeah. So I decided.
How did that happen? Did you get
yeah, again, that was from one of my boys, One of my boys was Chuck. And then Chuck was already by the time I was a senior in high school, he was a freshman or a sophomore at Cornell. So, when they have the open house, you kind of go up in the spring and size the joint out, figure out if you want to do it. I went there, I went to Brown, and then went to Dartmouth. When I got up to Dartmouth, there were like maybe 5 black people in the town. And I'm like, I don't think this is going to fit. Plus, they had just admitted women maybe 2 years earlier. So I was this is going to be like a dry run. I don't want to go to Hanover, New Hampshire. So Dartmouth was out.
Sure.
Then I went and spent a weekend in Providence, Rhode Island at Brown University. And it was kind of like the homecoming weekend and got involved with the Black Student Union up there. So Isaac Hayes do a show, which was really off the chain. And it was all right, but it didn't knock me out. It would have been acceptable, but it was like not a first choice. Then I went to Cornell and started hanging out with my boy and his boys. And we had like a rip-roaring weekend that I can't talk about or put in print. Because, we were doing some stuff that might be illegal depending on what state you live in.
Yeah.
And I said, this is the joint. So, I mean, it was a beautiful campus. It was a great curriculum. The vibe was real good. So I decided Cornell was the spot. Plus, they had a real good recruitment program. They had some real top-notch folks that were getting into the mainstream of getting African American high school students to apply to Cornell. So our class, actually my class was the class of 74, was the largest class of African American students ever in the history of Cornell University. And we tore the joint up. They still are like, damn, we let them in here. But we tore the joint up, but we had a good time.
You ever go back to have like alumni?
Yeah, I go back about every 2 or 3 years for the alumni weekend.
And stay in the dorm over there?
Well, yeah. Some of my friends stay in the dorm. I like to stay in a nice inn up the road with the views and everything.
Who knows? Who knows that those dorms must be, a lot of throw up.
Yeah, I mean, well,
maybe some blow in there.
It's still like bunk beds and shit like that. So
that's crazy to live like that later on in life.
You look back on it like it worked at the time, but sleep in the bunk bed now for the weekend for what?
Now I've had a couple of lawyers on shows that I've done. How hard is the bar exam?
That's a good question because, everybody has a different level of aptitude when it comes to taking written exams. It's that whole cognitive process. Some people left brain, some people right brain, some people no brain. And it's just a matter of how you yourself tackle exams. So for me, thank God and knock on wood, I passed it on the first go round. But, I never really had a problem taking tests. But I do have friends and colleagues who have sat once, twice, sometimes 3 times just to get past the exam. And it varies from state to state. Some states are a little bit easier than others. But
and where'd you take yours? In New York?
I took mine in New York, yeah. So New York and California
probably the hardest, right?
Yeah, they have reputations for being kind of ball busters on the exams. But I was fortunate. I took it. And then
how do you know at that time? How did you know that you passed? Like right there and then, or you had to wait?
No, you got to wait, and then you like in December because we took it in June or July. Then you got to sweat for months.
Sure.
And then somebody says it's printed. So you get a copy of the New York Times that day because it has all of the folks who took the exam and passed it. I'm like, phew. Let's go have a beer.
I was just going to ask you because, obviously you have gained a lot of success and have experienced success over the years. do you take time to celebrate those successes, and how? Obviously you said a beer for the bar exam, but like you closed, though, and we'll get into them. Like your client list is crazy. You closed a lot of deals. I mean, there's a lot of people, to be honest with you, that don't know how to celebrate success.
Yeah,
they want to wait until they get to a point and then they die. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I mean, for me, I guess the answer is yeah. After certain specific things, I like to celebrate, but for me, I like to celebrate it every weekend if I can. So my philosophy is you work hard, you play hard. And if you don't reward yourself and take breaks along the way, you're ultimately going to break down. You're not going to be any good to anybody. So I've just made it a way of life just to enjoy it as I take the ride, not wait for, some specific bump on the road so you can kind of take a weekend off. So
sure.
We take off whenever we can. And my wife and I love to travel. We love to eat food all around the world.
Drink
we
wine.
Love to drink wine. We're winos, man. We're wine aficionados.
I like that.
In the hood, we're classy winos, so we love Italian wines. We love Napa wines.
Sure.
And as long as it's expensive and good and full body and flavorful, we'll sample
red,
it
all
and drink
red,
it.
all red?
No, we drink some white, but the preference is red. The preference is Italian reds, big bull, full body reds like Amarones and Brunellos and Barolos and stuff like that. But there's a bunch of good Napas, Napa cabs. I mean, we just came back from Napa a few weeks ago.
Hey, listen, that's a beautiful thing. Is that like a mini grandfather clock?
So that's another story. The clock that's ringing now is called a Banneker clock. And we all know Benjamin Banneker was the African American who invented the timepiece.
Yes.
So this is a brother named Derek Holmes, who's based out of Denver, who owns the company, owns the trademark, and that's their grandfather clock. I have one at home too, but they make some beautiful high-end diamond beveled and wood face watches. So they're like the joint. Snoop, we got hooked up with Snoop, so he's wearing one, and a whole bunch of other folks in the business. But Banneker watches, check them out.
I like that, and I think it's important. I was telling growing up in Brooklyn, especially like you'll see like places like Ocean Parkway, Prospect Park. You'll see the big Jewish community, the big Hasidic community,
huge.
Those people stick together like no other.
Yep.
It's not. And you look at something like Chinatown.
Yeah.
People stick together like
That's
no
right.
other. If you go to Chinatown, New York City, you'll see a TD Bank with Chinese letters underneath, McDonald's with Chinese letters underneath.
Yep.
Same thing in Jewish areas.
Yeah.
You'll see they have kosher pizza.
That's right.
Koreatown
in L.A.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that should be done more. Like you look at it like in the black community. You talk about supporting black business.
Yeah.
How important is that? Because I see like you've been doing. I was in the bathroom. I see like an art piece. Is that from somebody?
Yeah, from one of our Tony, from one of my clients who's a brother who's an artist, and got some other pieces at home from other artists. And it is about supporting your own community. Because if you don't support your own community, you can't complain when other people don't.
Sure.
And in the African American community, it's hard to have that what we call that centralized, let's all live in the same hood kind of mentality that some of the other communities do, because, when you look at the Hasidic community, a lot of them have come over from Israel, the real strong Hasidics. The Indian community, they immigrated from India, and they're kind of like they bring family members, and you'll have 2 or 3 generations of folks living together in the same property, and a lot of other ethnic communities as well. The Italian community, Little Italy downtown.
Sure.
So for us, we've been relegated to what they call the ghettos years and years and years ago. So you had, in most of the major cities, some kind of ghetto where the African American community was housed. But that wasn't by choice. That's because of segregation and redlining. And we couldn't, even here in Atlanta, historically.
How long are you out here in Atlanta?
I've been here for 22 years. But like 40 years ago, I couldn't have lived in Stone Mountain. It was like 99% white. The Ku Klux Klan was still marching on the mountain 2 blocks away from here. So the Andy Youngs and the Maynard Jacksons and all of the pioneers of the Atlanta Black Civil Rights Movement, they lived on the southwest side of town because that's where they could buy property. That was decent property that they could live at and not be harassed.
Even though you gained success over the years, do you recall times like that you experienced some racial issues in being a lawyer?
I've never been like beat up by cops or chased down the street unless it was something stupid that I had done. But
or even a deal with somebody that had another lawyer that may have like profiled you or
I know what happens, and is rare because of the sophistication of other professionals most of the time. I mean, everybody's not as outspoken and left brain as our president is, but, you know, there will be folks that will subtly have comments that you know are racially divisive and come from a place of ill. And they won't say it to you yourself, but other friends who may be Caucasian, who are friends of yours, will say, like, that guy's out for you, he doesn't dig you. And, you know, even when I left the company I was working for in Washington, D.C., called Fairchild Industries, I was in-house counsel doing their radio work. And this was back in 1978 or so. And I interviewed with probably about a half a dozen different high-level white entertainment attorneys. I mean, the tops, the Paul Marshalls and folks like that. And I went around and, you know, they were all like, hey, kid, you know, you got great credentials and we'll kind of get back to you. You know, we have a lot of African-American clients and it would be good for the firm. Did I get one offer? Not. So the offer I got, again, came out of relationships. I got an offer from a guy named Arnold Burns, who was a Cornell grad. And that connection was because of Cornell. Because I saw it on my resume when he gave it over to the hiring part. He says, one of my alumni, interview him. So I interviewed and I got an offer and I joined a firm on Park Avenue called Burns Jackson Miller Summit in Jacoby. So I was on Park Avenue, 57th Street for a couple of years there, learning everything I could, copying stuff all night long.
Being a sponge?
Being a sponge. So I did entertainment, I did litigation, I did corporate work, anything that I could do to create the knowledge base. Then I'd have my clients kind of come in after 6 or 7 o'clock at night, jeans and guitars into a corporate firm because, you know, bringing them in the door during the day was not going to cut it.
Now, were you making money at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I was making huge dollars. I think I was making like $50,000 a year.
Hey, listen.
That was big money. I mean, my first job was like $25,000 a year as a corporate attorney with a Fortune 1000 company, and that was as a lawyer in the general counsel's office in Washington, D.C. So, you know, it's all relative to the time period because that was like over 35 years ago. But still, yeah, it was good money. I mean, you know, I had a nice townhouse, not a townhouse, but a brownstone in Brooklyn, and, you know, drove a Benz into the city, that kind of stuff. So he wasn't hurting, but wasn't blinging. I mean, that kind of money right now, a client will make on one deal just as their publishing advance.
Who was your first notable client, and how did you get them?
Oh, that's really easy. Roy Ayers, who's still a client of mine. Roy is going on maybe 76 now.
Wow.
Guy still works every single weekend. Right now, he's in South Africa.
Wow.
Last week, I think he was in Russia. The week before that.
And how did that happen? How did you?
Well, he had an attorney who passed away a number of years ago, and he just wasn't satisfied with him. So this was in 1980 when I first went out and set up my own practice, sharing space with another longtime friend of mine named Louise West, a great entertainment attorney who was like the mother of Reggie Osei, who you know.
Really?
Yeah, she was the one who mentored them, and all the cats that came out of Howard Law School and a whole bunch of others, they all call her Mama Louise.
Yeah, yeah.
So she was like, you know, get away from that large corporate firm and come on and hang out with us on the other side of 57th Street. So I joined her and rented space in a firm that was kind of owned and operated by some historical figures, Basil Patterson, David Dinkins, and they put me into that political business circle in New York, and they became my mentors. And David Dinkins, who was, you know, one-time mayor of New York, is still alive, still a good friend. I just saw him at an honors award for Beasler maybe about 2 months ago, but that was what we were doing in New York at the time. And started the practice and just kind of built it from there.
Let me tell you something. We're going to get into a bunch of your journey as we already have, but your client list is insane. I mean, obviously, we're talking about, you know, this is taking years and years to build. This is not something. One thing that I already get, and I know the audience will get, is that you put it in the work. You know, you look at it from a young kid, you put in the work. You didn't, you know, you took an extra bus, you took an extra time. That's the thing, too. You put in the work and get results.
You got to hustle.
You know,
it's not going to be.
I got to go over this client list. I got to go over this. And you stop me if you have some interesting story.
Sure.
But R&B, you represented Donnell Jones.
Yeah, still do.
Jagged Edge. Teddy Riley.
Yep, still do.
Freddie Jackson.
Yep.
Cameo, man.
Yeah, Larry
let me tell you
Blackman
something,
and
man.
that cod piece,
Candy is
man.
one of my favorites.
Those dudes are still working.
Really?
Yeah, Atlanta folks. Yeah, and I got linked up with that by their then manager, who was actually Maynard Jackson's ex-wife.
Wow.
Yeah.
It sure shows you, too, networking and relationships is everything.
Well, I mean, it's everything, because when I moved down here, my largest mentor was Maynard Jackson, the former mayor of Atlanta, who at that time had left office, but he was running Jackmont Securities, which was a securities firm, as in, Wall Street Securities. And he was like, hey, let me just show you the ropes here. I had an opportunity and negotiated a lot with another good friend of mine, Joel Katz, about joining his firm, which was Katz Smith and Cohen at the time. He was a leading entertainment lawyer in town who had everybody from, James Brown all the way through. Well, we just couldn't strike a deal. So we're still friends, but we just couldn't get a deal on what the back end was going to be.
Yeah.
So Maynard said, hey, these are my guys. Sherman Golden and Ray Sales, and it was Sales, Goodloe, and Golden. And he said basically they do not all, but the majority of the city's municipal bond work. They don't do any entertainment. So it'd be a good place for you to hang your hat and do your thing while you're getting admitted into Georgia. So my first 2.5 years, I was downtown on Peachtree Street in the Portman building. I think it's SunTrust Plaza now. And that's where I housed myself on the 43rd floor for the first 3 years until I said, I'm tired of commuting.
All the way up top. Why does it seem like, I'm a Brooklyn kid, but why does it seem like everything in Atlanta happens on Peachtree Street?
Because Peachtree is like our combination of Broadway, Madison, and Fifth all rolled into one long-ass street. That's Peachtree Street. Okay,
let's go over some more. Silk.
Yeah. So actually, my office manager, who's sitting right out there, Louise, has been Silk's manager and road manager or booking agent.
Really?
Yeah, her son's been their road manager, as his dad was prior to that. But Louise actually is another Brooklynite. She moved down here to Stone Mountain 5 years before I did. She used to work for me in New York, so we've been together over 25, 26 years.
Damn, that's like a marriage.
Yeah, it is. Almost as long as my first marriage.
Hey, listen, is it hard to stay married and be successful?
Yes and no. I mean, it requires more of a challenge, and that's why I think when you have a couple that both are actively working and both of them have active careers, your energies and your time and your focus are split. But, fortunately, thank goodness my first marriage was 27 years, 3 great kids. And we just got to that point where we kind of just drifted apart over time. But, the business will kind of pull you apart if you let it. Now, my wife that I've been married to now, beautiful woman named Pamela, we've been married 10 years. I can't go on a trip without her. She's like, nah.
It's not happening.
She's like, you going to L.A.? I'm coming. You going to Jamaica? I'm coming. And I love it because, we're two of a kind. We have, a bunch of common likes and needs and desires, and that's basically what we do together. And she travels with me, and we have a great time, and she's really sociable. So it's a perfect match.
You need a partner, man.
You have to have a partner. Yeah. Otherwise, you're doing it solo, and there's nothing wrong with doing it solo. But, God said, man is meant to have a partner.
You also had Ashanti.
Yeah.
How is that? Are you still representing with her?
Still work with her, not as often as possible. I did her last deal, which put out her last 2 albums on Entertainment One. I started working with her when she was 14 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, and we had a bunch of contracts, including one from Diddy, which we decided, nah, thank you, but let's do something different. So hooked up with a friend of mine, Ron Sweeney, who was over at Epic at the time. Yep. And ultimately went to work over there. But she's still in the groove and on a nice grind because she's been able to diversify her career. So she doesn't have to rely just on selling records. That's just a vehicle these days. So she spends as much time, if not more, just doing television and motion picture production as she does singing on stage.
Sure. And I see her touring.
Yeah.
Music Soul Child?
Yeah. Soul Child music is interesting because I represented music one-on-one for a number of years, but then had to kind of back out of just representing him directly to avoid a conflict because I also represented his managers, Mike MacArthur and Jerome Hips. and I represented his producers who were Carvin and Ivan out of Philadelphia.
At one point in time, how many clients do you have? Like, how many clients do you have now? Do you know? Do you go by a list?
I don't know, but I would say probably during any given day, I may work on matters for maybe 20 different clients. But during any given 6-month period, I may work on matters for like 100 different clients.
Now, are you talking about like contracts and stuff like that also?
Transactional. I hate going to court.
Who deals with you? Like,
Nah. If litigation comes up, I refer it out to a friend and a colleague, depending on what city, and I may do second seat. But I'm not going to run into court and file briefs in motion. It's mind-boggling. It's
so
something
you're
that you have to
handling
really
what?
do. I do the business transactions and negotiations, the deals. We call it transactional work. So if they need a company set up, I file copyrights and trademarks. I negotiate their deals and draft them and kind of orchestrate introductions and whatever it might be. If it's entertainment, it's something that I do. So it's not just in the music industry. It's music, film, television, live theatrical in terms of stage, international licensing, brokering deals, that kind of stuff. So, and it's a global practice. So there's always some interesting things going on with some real serious and significant characters.
Sure. What would you say the worst part of your job is? If you had to think about it.
Wow. The worst part. I guess the worst part.
Oh, there's that clock.
There we go, yeah. There's Banneker letting us know it's on the hour. And this time, since it's on the hour, he's going to chime 5 times.
It's okay. Again, so you were saying the worst part of the job?
Let me give some thought to the worst part. I guess the worst part, and I can't identify it with one specific client, but I would say the worst part is knowing that, you've given some advice, that it hasn't been followed, and now you're being asked, for all kinds of different things, business-wise or personal, and now you're being called on to kind of pick up the pieces that could have been avoided.
Okay. I'll tell you one thing. That clock is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it definitely is.
I like the way you said this time it's going to ring, 5 times. We spoke about what's the worst part of your job. What, to this day, do you still look forward to coming into the office? Like, what do you like doing about your job? Because people see a lawyer, they automatically, look at it like, oh, this guy makes money, a lawyer.
Yeah.
What's fun about being a lawyer?
Well, I don't do it just for the money. I mean, you got to have the money to keep it going.
Sure.
And you got to have enough money to enjoy it. Sure. So I would say, I don't have enough money to retire, which is what keeps me going.
Well, what would be, what's money to retire? Like,
well, these days, if you don't have several $1 million in investments, you can retire, but at what level? Because you got to figure out a third of that's going to taxes.
Sure.
So even if you were making $500,000 a year in terms of retirement income, by the time you take out your tax money, it could be a third of that gone. So that leaves you with a couple of $100,000. And if you still got to pay a mortgage or bills, by the time you're finished, there's no money for wine.
Sure. Let's get back to what we're saying the best part of your job.
So the best part of the job is just being involved in success. So I'm not one who can sing and get up on stage.
So you were never an artist?
Nah, I didn't want to be. I mean, I played violin.
Never had no bars?
I played trumpet when I was in, junior high school and elementary school, but that was about it. I never wanted to be a musician. I don't have musician talent. So that was never my thing. I was always behind the scenes. So even when I was at Cornell, I was a disc jockey on the radio, so that was fun. I was a concert promoter, so we did local concerts with Stevie Wonder and Shaka Khan and others, and that was fun. We made some money and got into business that way. And
did you have a relationship with Stevie?
Yeah, still do. Steveland.
Really?
Yeah.
And what is, for people who don't know Stevie Wonder, like, personally,
he's rare. I mean, guys like Steve are geniuses that are, when you're in their presence, you just get humbled. And there have been some clients and some folks that I've been around in the business that I've either worked with or just been friends and colleagues with who you just respect. I mean, it's not like you're going to run up to them and ask them for their signature or autograph.
Sure.
You develop a relationship, and you just respect them for what they do. And that's part of the reward of this gig, of what I do. I mean, I enjoy, for example, being backstage, watching a client on stage, and you look out in the audience, and there's like 5, 10, 15,000 people singing every single word to a song, and
things that you
they're going and they're spending $50 on the merchandise, and they're just enjoying themselves because we're in the entertainment business. So I just enjoyed the business of entertainment as opposed to being like a corporate lawyer or a real estate lawyer, or criminal lawyer, or baby mama drama lawyer. Not that those are negative. It's just not for me. It doesn't bring the same amount of fulfillment, and it's hard to get a passion for something that you're really not excited about doing. So every day for me is different. I mean, I may do the same kinds of things, but it's rare that I'll do two things identical 2 days in a row.
The basics are taught in law school, but what has experience taught you that school hasn't?
Well, undergrad and law school are good for teaching you the methodology, not for the exact information that you're going to need to really get out there and practice per se. So it gives you a framework to think, to analyze, and to write. And it gives you an ability to access the law when you need to figure out what the heck the law is. But outside of that, you can't take that and walk into a law office and go into practice the very next day because you just don't have the actual hands-on, on-the-job training skill set, which is why people are associates and they're grunts and they're, interns for a number of years before they really kind of step out there and are able to do it on their own.
When you really think about it, now that we're talking about deals or talking about experience and things you've learned, what's the biggest deal you ever closed?
Wow.
And then it's a two-part question. Once you tell me the biggest deal you ever closed, I have a two-part question.
That's pretty good. I would say on the, let's just call it the straight-up entertainment side for clients, no one deal, but let's just, for example, last year, one of my clients was a Jamaican guy that nobody knew about because a few years before that, he was a policeman in Jamaica. And he befriended a longtime client who was really like my adopted brother named Specialist Clifton Dillon down in Jamaica. He's one of the architects of successful reggae. He, kind of molded and structured the careers of artists like Shabba Ranks and Patra and Mad Cobra and Buju Banton. So Omi was his
Barrington Levy.
Barrington Levy, man. Yeah, I represented Barrington. And
really?
Yeah.
One of my favorite
Shaka Demus and Pliers,
Dangerously.
Barrington Levy, Third World. So Jamaica was like my second home, still is for like many, many years. But one of my great friends and an intelligent, really sharp producer, artist manager, artist development guy, specialist. So this guy named Omi, Omar Paisley, came into his studio and office a number of times saying, hey, man, listen to this track. Specialist, go back, needs more work. And ultimately got to the point where Specialist says, you got something. So he took it to his guys, Sly and Robbie and a few others down in Jamaica, and they put the twist on it. And the twist that they put came out to be a song called Cheerleader.
Okay,
So
wow.
a couple of years
That's
ago.
only a couple of years ago.
Cheerleader was the song of the summer for 2015. Or was it 16? 2016, just last year. It was a song of the summer last year. Number one in 37 countries. Did 500 million streams, 5 million downloads. So this guy Omi, who nobody knew about except the clan and the posse in Jamaica, went from being just a Jamaica favorite to a worldwide phenomenon. TV shows touring all over the world. So literally he went from being, just a policeman making $15,000 a year to a multimillionaire.
Wow.
So naturally that took a lot of different deals. And those different deals add up to a lot of money for everybody who's involved. So that's the beauty of being in the music business. Like Nat knows, Nat Robinson discovered Eamon. And together, they went from Eamon Who to give that kid a check.
Multi-millionaire,
yeah. And that's the beauty of our business. You just never know where that diamond in the rough is going to be.
So you've been in the business. How long have you been in entertainment?
Wow. So
30 years?
35 plus.
35 years.
Yeah.
So you're saying that deal was the biggest one you made?
Not the biggest one that I made, because I made, because it's all relative.
Yeah. Well, how about...
like years ago, when I would make deals for, like, whether it's Shabba Ranks or Third World, or made deals for Music Soul Child, or made deals for Jermaine Dupri or Teddy Riley, and, all the other artists I represent, those were big deals at the time. But, money 10 years ago and 20 years ago is not the same as money today.
Sure,
so they were big then, but now you multiply the same deal by 10 or 20, and then that really adds up to be significant. Some of the deals I do, the checks that come across the door are 7-figure checks.
Wow.
And they're beautiful. I wish they would all stay in my account.
You got to transfer them out.
Hey, I take my little percentage and then I keep on spreading it around to everybody who needs to get paid. But yeah, they're multi-million-dollar deals.
Yeah. Now I know a lot of people level, and a lot of lawyers I know are very actually, they're very smart. Obviously, not actually, obviously they're very smart, make money, When, I don't want to get into your pockets, but when you made, say, your first $1 million, did that change you?
It doesn't. I don't think it changes your personality. It may, in the short term, just change your consumption habits. So, I don't think professionals are that much different from talent, that when you first start making money, you start buying and wanting to acquire all the things that you couldn't get before.
Yeah, basically.
So, instead of driving a hoopty, you might drive a Benz or a BMW. And, instead of driving, just the 5 Series or the 3 Series, you want to drive the 7 Series. Instead of driving like a BMW or a small Benz, you want the 500 or 600 Series. So instead of living in a 3-bedroom house, you might want a 5-bedroom house.
Sure.
So it just gives you more opportunity to enjoy some of the finer things in life. And for me, it's just being able to enjoy life, to travel and spend time with my family, my wife and friends, and drink great wine, see great places. We love to go to Italy once a year and spend a couple of weeks there.
Sure.
We love to go to Napa and spend time there. You
got to go to in Sicily. Is a couple.
Taormina, man.
You got to go to Castellamare di Golf. It's a small little place.
Oh,
but
yeah,
beautiful
where?
food. It's in Sicily.
Yeah,
it's a small little place. I'll show you.
I got to check that out.
I'll tell you one thing. One of the most exciting and interesting things that I learned about Sicily is there's a lot of women mob bosses.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is something that's very,
They
different.
outlived the dudes.
Well, either that or they took over once they died or went away,
They weren't the targets. The guys all got killed or went to jail. But no, my wife and I love Italy. That's in terms of Europe, that's our favorite destination for vacation. So we try to go every year. We discovered Taormina last year, which is in Sicily, right near Mount Etna. And it's like, wow. So we love it there. And, the whole... Amalfi Coast with Positano and spend some time in Tuscany and Umbria in that area.
Get that mozzarella out there.
Fresh.
The beautiful.
Fresh.
Let me tell you something. The mozzarella they have out there is the products they have out there.
You know what? French and Italian. I prefer Italy to France, but I love France too, but Italy better. The French and Italian look at Americans as barbarians when it comes to food because we don't really have any palliative training about food. Sure. We're so into fried foods and fast foods and prepackaged foods with chemicals, and right there is farm to table.
That's why I tell people too. We're going to take a break in a second, but that's why I tell people too. In New York, they have dollar slices, and the reason why I tell people dollar slices are garbage, they're shit, they're no good, is because the products that they're putting together a slice of pizza with for $1 cannot be good. When you go to Italy and you see the mozzarella and the grated cheese and the sauce and
thin
the
crust.
Yeast. You know what I mean? These products. That's why people like in Brooklyn there's this pizza spot called the Farah. They get all their stuff from Italy. They're $5 a slice.
Yeah,
but you're paying for quality.
It's worth it.
At the end of the day, that's what it is.
No comparison.
But I'm not trying to make this a pizza episode. Internet, listen, we're sitting here with the legendary Kendall Minter. Okay, man, just going over the journey, man. So many stories, so many.
Oh yeah.
So many clients. We got to get back in. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
All right.
Cheers.
Hey, this is Adam22.
This is Lena the Plug.
And you're rocking with Premium Pete. We're doing this podcast thing, and we're going to go eat some Stromboli after. Let's get it.
Internet's, and we're back sitting here with Kendall Minter. Paul Marshall, according to Nat Robinson, another legendary person,
absolutely, yeah,
says that you are the best contract writer ever in entertainment. Why do you think he said that? Do you know?
For one, that's quite a compliment coming from an icon like Paul.
Was he a mentor growing up?
Paul wasn't a mentor. He was more of a colleague and a friend.
Wow.
We knew each other back from the initial days when I was trying to break into the New York entertainment law circles. So he was supportive of me in that regard. And we did deals together. I also did deals with other guys in his firm. And he had one of those small boutique legendary entertainment law firms in New York that everybody aspired to be involved with, as well as I did when I was in D.C. trying to come back to New York and interview with one of his partners, Monty Morris. And I unfortunately didn't get an offer. But when I supplanted myself into New York, obviously we began to do business together. And, I one of the things that I learned when I was at Cornell, and then also with my first job in the general counsel's office at Fairchild, was they don't really teach you to draft per se when you're in law school. You get the basics because you got to do briefs and stuff like that. But I think I really learned to draft when I went to work at my first private practice firm, Burns Jackson Miller, Subman and Jacoby, because as an associate, they let you out of the library and out of your office like maybe on a full moon when it's blue. Other than that, it's like, you got to sit down, grind out those drafts. The partners are kicking you in your ass. It's a struggle. There's a lot of nights when it was either takeout Chinese food or pizza. And then the joy of that was if you worked after 9 o'clock, you got to take a private black car home.
Oh, yes, okay.
The black car service. So
Company
I was like,
car,
all right, I'll stay until 9
Big
o'clock.
Apple.
Exactly, yeah. In this case, Citywide, where I still have an account.
Yeah.
So, you would order bad food, pizza at like 7 o'clock, work a couple of more hours, and then get out of there on a private car at 9. But it was really just about being a student, even when you're on a full-time employee. And I just took it that was my mission. I had to learn how to write contracts, interpret contracts, read them, because if it wasn't perfect, the parties would kick my ass. And they would send me back into the office or into the library to do some more research, and I hated that. So I just wanted to do everything I could to minimize that kind of embarrassment.
You represented the Backstreet Boys.
Yeah.
How the hell did this happen?
Wow. Big Lou, may he rest in peace, because, Lou Pearlman just passed away in jail last year. But that was a period when I was working and representing Lou Pearlman, Transcontinental, and Transcontinental Records was an offshoot of Transcontinental Airlines, because Lou made his money in airships, blimps, like the Goodyear blimp and stuff like that. He owned a fleet of blimps that he rented out.
And private, did advertisement on them?
That's it, and private jets, which he rented out. That was Transcontinental Airlines out of Orlando. Hangars and the whole bit down at the airport. He wanted to be in the music industry. He was Simon and Garfunkel. Garfunkel was his cousin.
Wow. So
he came from that musical family. He was from Queens, New York. And Lou and I met. He didn't have an entertainment lawyer. I met Johnny Wright. It was Johnny Wright and Donna at that time, his wife at the time. And they went into business together. Johnny would be the talent finder and the manager. Lou would be like the entertainment guru, putting all of the pieces together. And he came up with this idea of a boy band, the Backstreet Boys. So they did auditions, they cherry-picked them, they put the band together. And essentially what they did was they toured them around the high school scene. So they got a huge national audience of high school girls who loved them like crazy, built up a fan base, and started putting music together. That led to Ed Eckstein, who was a brother who had been around the business for years, still is a little bit, ran Mercury Records. And, we got it in, we sat, we talked, I negotiated the deal with the Polydor Mercury Records folks. Ed Eckstein was about to sign the deal. We signed the deal and sent it back. And then he called me in the office and said, Kendall, you know what? I can't close the deal. There's never, in my opinion, ever going to be another New Kids on the Block. I said, what? Nah, he says, it's just not going to happen. So I can't do this Backstreet Boys deal. So we said, all right, that's fine. So we went around the corner. And then, at that time, Jive and Zamba were huge businesses owned by Clive Calder. Clive and the crew over there, Clive and Barry Weiss and the rest of the crew, they got it. We did the deal. And as they say, the rest is history.
Did they know that you were just around the corner with the other guys?
Oh, yeah. We told them. Because we got Polygram and Mercury to pay us $25,000 to leave peacefully.
Really?
Yeah.
Why,
Because
for wasting your time?
after wasting our time, we signed a deal, negotiated, they had agreed on the terms, and they refused to close it. So they paid.
Just because the guy was closed-minded to think that...
He just didn't think there was going to be another boy band. And unfortunately, the rest is history, because Lou went on from Backstreet to NSYNC to 98 Degrees to Justin Timberlake to on and on and on. And he created the boy band phenomenon that was all housed in what was initially an office, then became a small city in Orlando where he had a complete rehearsal facility and offices and studios and training sessions, and he ran a huge business. The unfortunate thing is he was doing Ponzi schemes, and that's what took him to jail.
Yeah. Forget about it.
Yeah, forget about it.
We also represented Kool and the Gang.
Yeah,
One of the great things about Kool and the Gang is my father used to say, so my mother's name is Joanna.
Wow.
And my father,
she's on the air every day.
Yeah, my father used to, growing up, my father used to sing that song to her in the house.
Yeah.
It was a great memory to,
Well, those guys, actually, Robert Koolbell, one of the founders, obviously, is still a close friend. And I still currently represent George Brown, who was one of the founding members of Kool and the Gang, because about 9 months ago, George, with another longtime friend of mine from France called Claude Ismail, set up a label that's based out in L.A. now called Astana Music, and it's owned by George. Got about 6 artists that are signed in the studio and development. First artist is being released shortly, Chelsea. Actually, Kool and the Gang right now is on a plane to Asia. They left this morning they left early this morning, so they're going to be in Asia for 2 weeks.
The music doesn't stop. Man.
No, you know what? And I was looking at the music from the 70s is still hip, current, and on the air every single day. There's another group of behind the scenes, behind the microphones, producers, writers that I represent out of Italy. A guy named Mauro Malavasi and David Romani that most people probably never, ever heard of. But in 1981, 1982, they wrote a series of songs for an unknown group that was put together by a guy from Guadeloupe named Jacques Fred Petrus called Little Macho Music. The group was called Change, and that's where Luther Vandross came from, a group called Change. Some of the songs that you'll hear if you listen to, the Groove on XM Sirius Satellite every day are Searchin', Glow of Love, Lover's Holiday. Janet Jackson sampled it. Classic songs. This was back in the 80s.
You ever met Luther?
Yeah.
What was that conversation like?
I represented a number of Luther's backup singers. Kevin and quite a few others, and so
was he? And I don't mean to say like this, but was he good to them? Like meaning like
he was. He was loyal to his people. He was a perfectionist. So everything that came into the show was either approved or seen or orchestrated by Luther. The look, the sound. I mean, like Patti LaBelle sometimes, he would get in a place and the air conditioner would be on and he'd turn it off because he didn't want to catch a cold. Sure. So, just another one of those geniuses. But, they evolved from somewhere. And for Luther, it evolved from this group out of New York called Change that nobody ever knew about until the early 80s.
I never knew that. Wow.
Glow of Love, Searching, Lover's Holiday, all of that kind of stuff written by my clients and by Wayne Garfield and Tanya Willoughby. And these are the things that were written 35 years ago that are still on air now, just like the Kool and the Gang Joanna song that you just mentioned. Classic music that just lives on and on and on. And fortunately, pays the creators still every single quarter.
It's amazing. You also represent Pastor Creflo Dollar.
I sure did. Not personally, and I didn't represent the church. I represented Arrow Records.
Okay.
Arrow Records.
That releases the
music,
sermon and the music.
Yeah, it was a music division.
One of my good friends that used to live down here in Atlanta, his name is Gerard Smith. G-Rock, he goes by it. He brought me one day. I was telling him, like, I grew up Catholic.
Yeah.
And church got boring.
Yeah.
And I really couldn't relate to the priest. And I still think
I had
ancient.
my Catholic experiences too, so we'll share those.
Yeah, I still think it's ancient, Yeah. Anyway, he brought me to World Changes.
To World Changes?
I loved it. I loved it because I felt like he was talking real life experiences.
It's stuff that you could relate to.
And,
it wasn't in part Latin.
I liked it. I liked it. So, what do you do? Like, what does an entertainment lawyer do for, like, say, a preacher?
I've represented, fortunately, since I moved down here to Atlanta, my first gospel client back in 1995 was Kirk Franklin.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
You also, man, let me tell you something. Not before, I don't want to cut you off, but you have, I mean, there's a bunch of gospel artists.
Yeah, I've been blessed with that. Yeah.
Kirk Franklin,
Fred Hammond.
Yep.
And then I represented the music ministries at a number of what we call mega churches down here. So I did Montel Jordan, and his church, New Birth Missionary Baptist Church, where Bishop Long was my bishop until he passed last number of months ago, earlier this year.
Why do people give Creflo a hard time about all his private jet stuff? And you know what? This is a guy that is a businessman.
Well, that's the key. And it gets real dicey when you try to mix ministry with politics, with business. And he influences and has a positive impact on the lives, literally, of, if not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people all around the world, because there's probably at least 20,000 people just here in the Atlanta market at World Changers, not to mention in New York and all the affiliated churches. Same thing with Bishop Long before he passed. He had an entire ministry with churches all throughout the United States as well as in Okinawa.
Is he one of the biggest in what he does?
Creflo Dollar is one of what I call the super mega ministers, evangelists in the United States. And then again, we have this black world versus this white world.
Sure.
And the black world is called gospel. And the other side of the coin is called Christian.
Yeah.
But, at the end of the day, it's all praise music. And with Creflo Dollar, I mean, he's caught heat because, his enjoyment of private jets, and he's not the only one to fly private. But, the enhancement and the upgrade of one Gulfstream to another caught the news.
Yeah.
So we backed off on it until the heat died down. And then after the heat died down, the board of directors and the parishioners and the church members still said, hey, get your jet. He's like doing God's work, and he's entitled to it. But what? I look at ministers, mega ministers. I look at them and the work they do, and I equivocate it to being governors or mayors of large villages or cities. Because like in a typical mega church here in the South, it might have anywhere from 10 to 25,000 members. Well, that's a small town.
Sure.
In some parts of America. And they take care of educational needs. They take care of some health needs. They deal with everything from marriage to baptism to funerals. So they really are like the mayors and the governors of their particular ministerial village. And, just like our senators and congressmen and our cabinet members who like to fly private, they like to fly private too.
You know what I love about Creflo? First of all, like I was explaining, World Changes Church in Atlanta, to me when I went there was like Madison Square Garden. I mean, the place was enormous.
Huge.
But one thing I really liked is he had a situation, I have an older daughter. And, there's the clock.
Yep.
And I have an older daughter, and I think he went through something where they tried to say, like, he put his hands on her or whatever.
Yeah, he disciplined her.
He came out that Sunday. Just walked up to the podium and said, everything is fine in the Dollar household.
Right.
And went on with his business. I was like, that guy is a gangster, man.
That's it.
And
it's because you're in a spotlight.
Sure.
And, if you hit your kid, you can hit your kid these days and you go to jail because they can file a complaint against you for abuse.
Sure.
And depending on who you are, they'll either say, oh, forget about it, or, hey, look who did this. He's in the spotlight. So
and try to ruin you. With
the spotlight comes scrutiny and comes haters. It's part of the business.
How do you deal? I mean, I know you're older. You probably don't look at it like this, but how do you deal with haters? Like people like, I'm sure there's other.
I've got my share of haters. I got folks that are detractors. Some folks that I may have never, ever met, done business with, or come across. But I'll get secondhand reports that, so-and-so is really down on you. Like, you don't do this, you didn't do that, or you can't do this. And at the end of the day, I dismiss it unless it's something that I know that I could have done and didn't do, or shouldn't have done and did. Because there's always going to be detractors when you have some level of success. There's always some jealousy. There's always contempt. And it's just part of what we do on any level.
Jay-Z told us, he says, I'm going to show you how to move in a room full of vultures. And I think that's a key also for me, and that's why I love sitting down with people like yourself, because growing up as a New Yorker, as a Brooklynite, some of us particularly took things way too personal. And in the music industry, I feel like if you take things too personal, you'll never.
You got to get out, because it'll drive you crazy.
You got to learn to just
you
keep
got to
moving,
like water
smile.
off a duck's back. You got to let it slide right off of you. And sometimes if it's correct, then you have to be able to accept criticism.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of stuff that'll come at you that's like from left field, and you have to understand it's from left field and not let it stop you in the path of what you're trying to do.
Yeah. One thing I really admire about you is that you've been able to evolve over time. And what I mean by that is go from CD sales to look at, digital downloads. Now you talk about streams. We talk about Pandora and all these other places. I looked at something I think like Pharrell. They said for Happy, he had like 11 million streams. He's getting like 100,000 or 200,000.
Yeah.
Are they jerking the artist? And I don't mean to say it that way, but meaning like, is it not meant for the artist to make money if you're going to have 11, 12, 13 million streams and it's such pennies on the dollar?
Yeah. Well, the business model's completely changed. It's evolved, as we call it, and it's evolved to less money in the pockets of the creators. And that's real simple because if you look at, let's not even go back as far as, vinyl, but let's just say CDs.
Okay.
CDs were popping. They were selling at wholesale for $10, selling at retail on the store shelves for $12 to $15 a pop. But basically what went back to the record company was $10 a pop for a CD. Then that evolved into digital downloads. So the digital download, basically, if you wanted an album on iTunes, it was like $10.
Sure.
But then iTunes started giving people the opportunity to cherry pick an album apart. So you could just buy one or two tracks.
Yep.
So that took things out of the album format into the option of just taking...
So you think that hurt that?
It definitely hurt it because people had the option of not taking the whole album, which might have some garbage tracks on it that you wouldn't want to listen to anyway, but listen to and buy only the things that you like, which might have been the hit single.
You're right. You know why? Because I think about it, me growing up, you got to listen to an album front to back.
Yeah.
Because, if you give it a couple of listens, you say, oh, shit, there's a couple of songs on
That's
that I
right.
do like.
Yeah.
And some of those never see the day of light.
Right. Because if they're not singles played on the radio and promoted, and you don't have to buy the album, the only exposure you're going to get is what's being pushed by the labels and the radio stations, which is the single. So people are going to prefer to pay $1, maybe $1.29 on iTunes to download a single instead of paying $10 to download the entire album. So, and now with streaming has really supplanted and surpassed what's happening with the digital download. So for the first time last year, music consumption is predominantly streaming in the format of dollar revenue. Mm-hmm. But what that means is that now instead of getting even $1 to $1.29 on an iTunes download, a record company and an artist will see a fraction of a penny per stream for that track, 100th to 1,000th of a penny. So that means you got to have literally millions of streams, millions of YouTube views, just in order to be able to afford a dinner.
But who's making this money? Is it
streaming services?
So they're not distributing.
It's the streaming services, yeah. I mean, and they argue, for example, the streaming services, and I understand the argument. They will pay as much as 50% to 60% of their gross revenue for the licenses to play the music. Mm-hmm. So while they may take in, let's just say, $1 billion for one streaming service, they may only net a fraction of that. Maybe a third of that is actually net profit because they have to pay a lot out for the right to play the music that's bringing them in the $1 billion. But at the end of the day, when you trickle it down to the artist whose music is being played, the record companies who are financing the music, the publishers and the writers who are writing the songs, they're getting fractions of pennies per stream, per play, because of the negotiations that are going on Capitol Hill every year.
I've said this before, and I just want to get your opinion. In this day and age, an artist, sometimes they could just put out an album for free because there's really no money in it. The money is touring.
Look at Chance the Rapper, man.
Yeah.
Chance is making a lot of money right now, but he's not making a lot of money because he sold initially a lot of downloads. He used music as a vehicle. And these days, the business has changed that, when you go up and down my hallway, you'll see the gold and platinum records. Those are dinosaurs now. Those things ain't happening anymore. You can count on one hand the number of platinum plaques that are issued by the industry in a 6-month period.
It still
now
means something, though.
It still means something, but people are. Here's a classic example. I'm sure I'm assuming that you might have on your phone or subscribe to either Pandora, Spotify,
Absolutely.
Okay, so
Tidal,
like most people.
Apple Music.
So now, on even on the premium service with Tidal or Apple, you might be paying $20 a month. But for that, you got access to a few million songs. So you now have consumption access to a few million songs for $20 a month, whereas in the old model, you would have paid $20 for 2 albums.
Yeah.
That's the difference in the economics. So people are preferring to stream their music. They get it on a consumption and access basis as to an ownership basis, what you would have with either buying a physical CD or purchasing a download to a hard drive.
Perfect segue. You wrote a book.
I did.
Negotiating 360 deals.
Yes.
That you could find, I'm sure, in Amazon,
Sure,
Barnes
yeah,
and Nobles,
yeah.
all over. Why do people, artists particularly, or managers or people in the industry say, stay away from 360 deals? Like, why do they make it like it's such a problem?
Well, it is. If you're on the artist side, it's a financial burden. The reality is, as of about 10 years ago, if you're a new artist getting a deal, chances are that 90% of the time that you're going to be offered a deal, it's going to have a 360 clause in it. And the 360 clause evolved specifically for the same purpose that we were just talking about, because the revenue sources that companies had from sales of CDs and digital downloads is dwindling and continue to decrease, slowly being amplified now by streams, but not to the same amount as the loss from the physical and digital sales. So they had to find another way to make more revenue. The way they make more revenue is by saying, you're a new artist, we're spending hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars to break established and put your music out. We don't want to just rely anymore on getting some money from streams and some dwindling download money. If you're making money because of our investment, we want to share in that just like your manager does.
How much do they want to take?
It'll vary. The opening shot most of the time across the bow is 20 to 25% of the gross. And that's why I put the book out, to educate people, one, about what 360 deals are, to understand them, see where they came from, so you see the evolution of where it was to where it is now. I give them samples of what a 360 clause looked like in the record contract and kind of wrap it up with a few nuggets and jewels about these are the things that you or your attorney or representative could ask for and negotiate and put into a deal that kind of lessens the economic impact against the artist. But at the end of the day, if you're a new artist, it's going to have a 360 clause in there because the record companies have to make up the lost revenue.
Sure. Are you a fan of 360 deals?
Depends on who my client is. I represent artists. I represent independent labels. I represent independent producers. So when I'm representing the artist, I hate the 360 deals. When I'm representing my label clients and my producer clients, the 360 clause is in the contract. So, I can't say I'm a contract hoe, but I put in the agreement clauses to benefit my particular client. That's why you just have to be knowledgeable about, depending on where you are on the side of the table, what do you need to do to protect your best interest? Because it's a balancing question.
Another segue. Can you explain Sound Exchange to us?
Sure. I'm on the board of Sound Exchange. I represent, along with 9 other colleagues, the artist community. The other side of the table is represented by the label community, because Sound Exchange membership is in 2 categories, labels and artists. Sound recording copyright owners are the labels, and the artist membership. The money that Sound Exchange collects, which is just under a little under $1 billion a year now, gets divided 50% to the artist side, 50% to the label side. What Sound Exchange does, and has done for the last dozen years, is they collect money from the streaming services that we were just talking about.
Sure.
Non-interactive digital streams. Pandora, XM Sirius, Spotify, Tidal, Apple Music, all Amazon, all the others, even the radio stations that have .coms. Those are all non-interactive streaming services. They all pay a license fee that's collected and paid into Sound Exchange. And it's tracked by the metadata, the ISRC codes that are embedded in all the music that's played, so it can be tracked for streaming reporting. And then Sound Exchange pays either on a monthly or quarterly basis the labels and the artists for the almost $1 billion that it takes in every year. People confuse it because they don't do their homework. They say, I don't need to join Sound Exchange because I'm with ASCAP or BMI, but they don't know. ASCAP and BMI are publishing. Sound Exchange has nothing to do with publishing. It's all a completely brand new copyright, and it's a performing right that was legislated by an act of Congress a number of years ago. that says there's now a performance right in sound recordings. There's an income flow that goes with it, and it goes to record companies and artists.
What's the longest client you ever had?
It would have to go back to Roy Ayers. I started representing Roy in 1980, and he's still a good friend. His family, his wife, his daughter, I talk to on a weekly basis. So, yeah, he's been with me for 37 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Another thing I'm sure people listening would love to know is what's some of the books you read?
Wow. That's pretty broad. I mean, I read...
What are you reading right now?
Outside of Billboard magazine and the New York Times and a few online things. There is a book that is called God's Promise, and there's God's Promises for Men, and there's one for women, so naturally I'm reading the one for men. There is another book that I'm kind of reading off and on to kind of keep me focused and keep me in good graces and out of the doghouse with my wife, called Marriage Talk. And that's written by a bishop out of Chesapeake, Virginia, which is pretty good because, you know, we have to be students on a regular basis, and this is something, relationships, you have to work at. And, you know, most of my reading time I do either when I'm just on down mode, you know, sitting on the beach or relaxing on vacation or on an airplane. So I try to mix that with industry periodicals and just basic news stuff.
Desmond Tutu.
Yeah.
Tell us about him.
Wow, that was another honor. That was one of those guys where I was just sitting in the room mystified by, wow, this is Desmond Tutu. I represented him a number of years ago when just as Mandela was coming out of Robben Island and, you know, going into head up South Africa in the political mainstream. And we did a benefit concert, a birthday celebration for Desmond Tutu. And we also did a celebration for Mandela over in London at Wembley Arena. And Tutu's niece got involved, and she pulled me in. I was, you know, living in New York at the time. So I basically was, again, behind the scenes, just putting together a lot of the docs and the paperwork that were necessary to make these series of events successful and raise money for the anti-apartheid cause.
Did you get a chance to meet Nelson Mandela?
No, that was one regret that I have. I never had an opportunity. I've had clients who've been to his house, artists,
sure,
who spent time with him, literally taking photos with him and Winnie.
Yeah,
we
had Memphis Bleak on an episode. He said him and Jay were out in the house. He said that they had a chef. It was an amazing experience.
He was really a gracious guy.
You know, it was amazing. No, your opinion. What makes a successful artist and an artist team today in this day and age?
Well, on the artist side, you have to really be, one, talented, obviously. Mm-hmm. That's where it has to start, from a God-given talent or trained talent. But then you have to be focused, committed, and on the grind. I was listening to a couple of the artists, Lionel Richie and a couple of others, this morning on an interview.
The clock.
There we go. It's the quarter of mark.
And this one's doing 5 times?
Yeah, I got, two more.
Okay. So
Banneker's keeping us on track here and letting us know that time is passing.
Sure. Time is money.
Yeah, but I was listening to Lionel Richie and a couple of other the new American Idol judges this morning. They were like, people don't understand, because they were talking about the contestants. You have to understand that this is a business where you got to be 100% committed. You got to understand there's going to be very little, if any, sleep. They were on 3 hours of sleep from last night's activities. And you just have to be willing to have a thick skin, because you're going to get more no's than you will get yeses. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it's important to understand that no person can do it by themselves. As they say, no man is an island. So in order to be a successful artist, you also have to have, if you're going to maintain it and grow it, a successful team around you. And that includes a lawyer, an accountant, and a business manager, a great talent agent, a great personal manager, a great publicist.
What do you think people find? I mean, do you think they just come when you're talented, or
it's word of mouth?
Yeah,
it's word of mouth and timing, because you know there are a lot of talent agents, but they're not, and a lot of good managers, but they're there's only so many people that an agent or a manager can handle. So they've got to kind of look at, who do I invest my time in? And it's going to be someone who's either successful already or on the cusp of success, because, if you're a growing artist and developing artist and you're making $1,000 a night, your agent's getting $100 a night, there's not a whole lot of incentive for them to go out and book you versus the act that's getting $50,000 a night. It's just the economics of it. So you got to kind of maybe move up and grow your team as you become more and more successful.
Who have you seen? You mentioned who have you seen get some extreme amounts of money for a show? Have you dealt with any artists that get?
Yeah. I mean, I represent some concert investors, concert promoters. For example, one of my clients is out of New York. Jesse Bozeman, Sunsong Productions, who's one of the deans of the black concert promotion circuit for like the last 30 years. But I also represent a lot of other independent concert promoters all around the world. So they'll call me and say, hey, I need Chris Brown or I need J-Lo, and, see if you can get him. I'm working on a Chris Brown concert right now for a private wedding in India in December.
What type of budget is that? I mean,
it's $1 million plus.
Wow.
Yeah. Lionel Richie and Stevie Wonder won't do individual dates for under $750.
Wow.
You get people like Mary J. Blige, and she's $250 plus. I got one client who wanted to do Pitbull, so we were negotiating for Pitbull.
Was he like $250
plus? Because then you got the private jet.
Yeah.
The private jet
What's
alone.
some of the most craziest riders you ever seen? Have you?
Yeah, I mean, not so much crazy, but I mean, like, one of my clients and longtime friends, Dionne Warwick, she loves Cristal Rosé.
Yeah.
So she wants roses and flowers and Cristal Rosé in her dressing room. Some other riders I've seen is like a bowl of jelly beans with some cognac.
Let me tell you something, man. Dionne Warwick made That's What Friends Are For.
Yeah.
And I come from a big Italian family.
Yeah.
And at every single hall party we had, whether it be a wedding or Sweet 16, we all get in a circle. And that song plays.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, like, my mother has about 4 or 5 friends, 50 plus years.
Mm.
I literally almost think they're my aunts. And that song, I swear to you, is
classic.
Just the whole meaning of my family.
It's classic.
True meaning of love.
Yeah.
So get that Lady Roses and Cristal.
Absolutely. She
But
deserves it.
It's amazing to see some of those, people getting a certain amount of money and stuff like that. And but where does that even, like, are you the person that says, hey, I think you could get more? Or not to somebody who's already established, maybe somebody who's not. Like, how does someone figure out what they're...
Well, market value, you determine market value based on chart positioning, based on record sales, based on demand, based on exposure, TV shows, how many award shows have you been on stage for? And all of those things kind of build up, and it's the talent agents who go out and pitch, and they already know and have a general sense of how much they can command based on how much people are willing to pay. But, once you've been out and established for a while, your nightly fee is going to start at $100,000 and work up to about $1 million. I had years ago, there was some folks that wanted to do a private wedding in India again, and they wanted J-Lo, so I contacted Benny Medina, and we kind of got stuck because my guys didn't want to go over $1 million.
And she wanted more than that. What she wanted, $1.5 million?
She wanted $1 million plus.
Yeah.
So we weren't able to do the show, but I mean, this was like 10 years ago.
Yeah, she was hot.
She's hotter now.
She's still hot.
But she's
hotter
hotter now.
Yeah.
With the television shows and everything else that she's doing. So it's just a point of reference to say, $1 million to some people is a lot of money, but $500 to $1 million is a common range for like scores and scores and scores of artists.
Yeah.
And that's per night.
Hey, listen, that's crazy. You have so many accolades, and as we wind this episode down, you got the NBA Living Legend Entertainment Attorney Award.
Yes.
How did that happen? Like, what did you do to get that?
I don't know. They just called me and said, hey, we're going to honor you this year.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Who called you? David Stern?
No. It was just, I forgot who it was, but they were like, we're just going to honor you this year. And I'm like, I'm humbled. So I always accepted. I mean, the Living Legends Foundation gave me the Chairman's Award 2 years ago. Tomorrow I fly out to L.A. to do the annual Living Legends Award. I'm going to present it to two of my friends and colleagues, Vivian and Ray Chu. Mm-hmm. Vivian Chu's been around forever. We had great fun with Shabba Ranks and others at Epic.
Shabba.
And then Ray Chu, is her husband, who basically is on not only every TV show that has awards and music bands behind it, but on Dancing with the Stars every Monday night.
Legendary.
So they're legendary, and I'm presenting them with their award tomorrow night.
Hey, listen, we're gonna go back to this client list as we wind this down. Vander Holyfield.
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
Well, there's a lot of athletes that have a lot of money that love music. Vander's not the first. It just so happened that he was my client, and I kind of represented him for a number of years when his company, Real Deal Records, here in Atlanta, was in its heyday, operating out of his 101-acre estate down in, just below the airport, and he had you
ever go there?
Oh, yeah, lots of times, because the office was there, the studio was there, the training facilities were there, and all the artists would kind of call out their second home. So he had a nice little run in the entertainment business, but a lot of athletes do. He's not the first. Roy Jones and a whole bunch of others dabble in the music industry.
What is he doing now? Do you know?
Evander's kind of retired because you can't get a fight just because he's past that prime age that the boxing authorities want to award fights to. So he's just living off the monies that he made over the past from investments.
That's a perfect segue to. So you're an entertainment lawyer, very successful, 35 years in the business, made tons of money, done amazing things. Mm-hmm. How important is it to do stuff outside of it? Meaning, okay, Vander Holyfield's a boxer, but if a Vander Holyfield invests in a tech company, people are how the fuck is a Vander Holyfield worth $400 million? Well, that's because you didn't even realize yet. Do you invest in things outside of entertainment law and law business, you know what I mean, and your own business?
Sure. I just subscribed, case in point, just 2 weeks ago to this online publication called The Motley Fool for $99. And now I'm about to, I can't give the stock ticker number, but now I'm about to buy this stock, a few shares of it, in the company that provides some of the guts for the new iPhone 8. And the stock is predicted to go through the roof. So, and it's not insider trading because it's just projections by the analysts at these brokerage firms. So, when I was in New York, I invested in real estate. So we had a 23-family building on Albemarle. Right
Still
now.
Have it?
Well, sold it, but, it was right on Ocean Avenue, right in the middle of the hardcore Jewish area and right next door to Flatbush where I lived. And, myself and my accountant and one of my boys, Ron Sweeney, who was another lawyer at the time, still is. I mean, he represents Cash Money and a bunch of others, Little Wayne and folks. But we all bought this building, held it for a few years and sold it, made some crazy money.
Do you ever dealt with Baby from Cash Money?
No, I
Birdman?
haven't. I haven't. Not directly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just watching that unfold, that whole, I don't know if you're familiar with the situation between him and Wayne.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just...
Yeah.
I don't want to sit here and act like I don't know exactly why that is going on. I mean, obviously he's saying pay me.
Yeah. He wants more, and he wants more value for what he's delivering. He's going to hold up his goods until he gets. It's just basic contract negotiations.
It's sad though.
Yeah.
It's sad because it probably takes. You could tell it took Lil Wayne out of man, I don't even want to create.
I know it killed his spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, we can't forget the client list of hip hop. Gang Twins, man.
Oh yeah, I mean Kane still walks in the office 2-3 times a week. He had to pick up his dough
out here in Atlanta.
Yeah,
give me some money.
And Louise, again, my office manager kind of acts as what I call a surrogate manager for he and his partner D-Rock. But they work every week, man.
Nice.
They got a huge fan base. They're all over the world every single week collecting dough and being on stage.
That's why I love talking with people like you, because some people almost forget what these people are doing. Or and obviously I don't want to get through as I speak to this all the time. I always say it's amazing how in hip hop people try to he ain't relevant no more. What's he doing? Meanwhile, Barry Manilow and Willie Nelson are touring the world until their 80s. And
oh yeah, I mean when you have a fan base, classic example that we all know because I'm there every year. Frankie Beverly, man. When was the last time Frankie Beverly had a new record?
You can't keep running in and out of my life.
Frankie has one of the most loyal fan bases around in the R&B and African American and pop communities that he literally is still working, every single week all around the country, mostly in the United States as opposed to overseas, but still some overseas trips. And, you're talking about 50, 75, 100 grand a night. Look at Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Wow.
Maurice has passed, God rest his soul, but Verdine, his brother, Verdine White, and Philip Bailey, and some of the others, Larry Dunn from Earth, Wind, and Fire, and they toured with Chicago. and they're still playing amphitheaters and 5,000-6,000 seaters on a regular basis. Lionel Richie and Mariah Carey just came off the road. It was Lionel's show.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I seen them. They were in Philadelphia, and it was funny because she's like, I don't want to say she was opening up for him,
Right?
But they kind of had
it
like that.
She was his guest.
Really?
It was Lionel's tour.
Yeah,
featuring Mariah Carey as his guest.
You ever met Lionel?
Yeah,
he's Lionel's a favorite of mine, man. So talented.
Well, I knew Lionel back from the day because back in New York when I was like a little, lawyer hood rat running around the street with my card, hanging out and pressing the flesh wherever I could.
Getting coffees.
I befriended Betty Ashburn, who was his manager. He was the sixth member of the Commodores. He was actually the guy because he would do an even split with the rest of the group that gave Lou Pearlman the idea that he was going to be like the sixth member of the Backstreet Boys and split the check with them evenly. And that's led to some lawsuits and other stuff like that. But still, that's when, the first time I met Lionel and the Commodores, when, Benny was still alive and it was managing them.
Let's continue to go over your client list, particularly in hip-hop. Goody Mob.
Yeah. Goody Mob was my first big Atlanta-based client when I moved to Atlanta. Quick history on that was they were represented by a guy that nobody around Atlanta knows. His name is Kasim Reed, who is our mayor. Kasim,
really?
Yeah, Kasim's a lawyer. He was with a large, general practice law firm downtown Atlanta. He represented the Goody Mob when I first came down here. He was also a state senator, but he was extremely busy and getting busier. So we passed the Goody Mob torch over to me, and I picked up the clientele and kind of ran with it. And, the rest is history. I just worked with them through a lot of their success, and that was the heyday when LaFace Records and Usher and Tony Braxton and everybody were really blowing up.
What's your relationship with Usher?
I don't represent Usher. I know Usher because, he's worked with a lot of my producer clients. Obviously,
like Jermaine Dupri.
Yeah, like Jermaine Dupri and Brian Michael Cox and others, and D-Mile, who's done some tracks on him just recently for his most recent album. So, Usher is just a generous guy. He is, a gentle soul that's got humongous talent. I kind of say he kind of grew up and expanded his career in the profiles and the shadows of Michael Jackson, who's one of his idols, and he took a lot of dance moves from. But there's just a lot of great people around the Atlanta music scene that have been evolving here and maintaining and living here for like the last 20, 30 years. Whether it's, Ludacris or Chris Brown or Usher or Tony Braxton or scores of others, Goody Mob and Outkast and all of those folks.
Sure.
That's what put Atlanta on the music map when I first moved down here in the mid-'90s.
Heavy D and the Boys. How did that even happen?
Dwight.
Rest in peace.
Dwight. Yeah. I mean, I represented them like the Fat Boys and some others when I was back in New York, and that was during, the heyday of the New York Renaissance, what I call the music renaissance in New York. And Heavy was just the guy. And Dwight was, I call him like a gentle bear, gentle giant bear, because obviously he was kind of large.
Sure.
But his spirit was so gentle, and he was just super talented and not egotistical, not, industry-driven crazy, but just a nice guy from Mount Vernon, New York.
Yeah. With a good cousin named Pete Rock.
That's right, yeah.
Pete Rock's a friend of mine, man.
Yeah.
And I think it may have been the first time I ever had a Pete on the show, so it was like Pete and Pete.
Yeah.
Double P, but rest in peace to...
definitely. And
Heavy
quite a
D.
few others, unfortunately.
Yeah. Even working with our very own, who's in the building, Nat Robinson.
Yeah.
First Party Music, so Milk D, MC Light.
Yeah. I mean, that whole dynasty. So, they kind of...
Underrated.
Audio 2, they hit it at a time when, what I call it, I hate to say music was music, because music is still music.
Sure.
But they came up at a time when, Audio 2 and Top Billin' and Light and Nat, and then later on with Eamon. It was just like what I call a well-oiled machine.
Sure.
That knew how to take talent and capitalize on it. I mean, Light's a perfect example, even with D, who was MC Milk D at that time. Who's still great on the writing and producing side, but Light, like Latifah and a bunch of others, have evolved beyond just music.
Sure.
So, now they're doing television,
sure,
and they're
just
doing
voice
movies,
alone,
and, they're doing radio and all kinds of stuff like that. So again, you've got to be able to take a brand that has a fan base attached to it and just monetize it and monopolize it in as many different ways as you can while you got that moment in space.
Where do you see the music landscape in 5 to 10 years, in your opinion?
Well, music is not going away. You know, people say, is the music business dying? Hell no, the music business is not dying. The music business, like most other businesses, is changing shape and form like an amoeba. So it kind of transforms based on technology and consumer consumption patterns. Technology has evolved from wax to CDs, CDs to digital, digital to streaming, and who knows what the hell's going to be next. But it's an evolution of technology. Music consumption has just continued to expand only because, you know, we're sitting here talking about music that was great from people that created it in the 70s. Well, our kids who we're having now don't know nothing about that music that was created back in the 70s, but we're listening to it. And they're listening to the music that's current now, some of which has been influenced by the music from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And that's because I call music kind of like the additional lifeblood that we you know, can't see and feel. All you can do is hear it and sense it. But it's everywhere you go. You know, can you think of the last time you saw a TV show or checked out a movie that didn't have music in it, or went to a mall, or went to a sports game in an arena, or drove around the city, let alone go to a club, that didn't have music playing, that went to a gym and worked out and you didn't hear music in the sound system, or go to a bar or a restaurant, didn't have music, sit on an elevator and hear music?
Sure.
Music's everywhere. So, I mean, that's the beauty. That's why I love being in the music business, because it touches everybody's lives. And it's not broken up by race or age or gender or religion or ethnicity. Because, you know, I remember being in Tokyo years ago with Shaba. And we were doing an outdoor show in Japan.
Shouts to the clock.
Yep, there's Banneker giving his cloud, saying, hey, you know, here's another quarter hour. But it's all good because we're just sitting kicking it. So we were in Japan. It's a Shaba Rank show. And naturally, keep in mind that at that time, which was back in the 90s, probably about 15% of my clients were from Jamaica. I was representing everybody who was coming out of Jamaica, whether it was Third World or Barrington Levy or Shaba Ranks or, Beanie Man. I also work with Peter Tosh and Bunny Wailer from Bob Marley and the Wailers. But just a score of Jamaicans. So Jamaica was like my second home. So we were over specialists, and Shaba and I were in Tokyo. He was doing the show. Now in Japan, yeah, I mean, it's a very progressive country, but every Japanese person doesn't speak English. The majority don't. They speak Japanese. So we were at the show, and maybe one person out of 100 spoke English in the audience. But when he came on stage and started singing his song, they knew every single word, which is in English and patois. Half of the patois I can't even understand, but they were singing the patois and they were singing the English. And then, you know, and they weren't just mouthing it, they were singing it. So it just tells you how, you know, the essence of music is embraced internationally, and that's what makes it so powerful.
That's special.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, even just to go and experience that, you know. Is there ever a deal that you did where it wasn't a good deal, where it's like you had to deal with the headache of it, or people complaining, or something that got you out of your character too, like where you're like, listen, leave me the hell alone.
Yeah. You know, I mean, again, at the end of the day, as a lawyer, we have to represent the best interests of our clients. And you got to understand that every deal is not necessarily a good deal. But sometimes it's the client that's saying, I don't really care. Just make it the best deal that you can for me, and I'll deal with it. So I'm like, but be aware, and I'm warning you up front that you're not getting this, you're not getting that. And, you know, sometimes the killer is in the fine print, not in the fact that you're going to sign, they're going to give you a check for $500,000. Because that may be the only money you might see for years. And in some cases, it's true if, you know, you're doing an album every year or two, and you're never seeing any royalties because you're never in a recoup position. So you're only making money when you sign the deal and when you deliver the album, and then you wait until the next album is picked up so you get more money to go deeper in debt. So then you have to go out on the road and work. You got to write some of the songs so you can get some of the publishing so that you can eat and maintain a lifestyle and a career. But I've done a lot of deals where I'm like, I hate this deal. This shit sucks. But they still like, yeah, let's do it anyway. It's good money. I'm like, yeah, but all right, well, You get yours, I'll get mine. We'll just do the best and just hope for the best because, when you sign a deal, you're not always in control of what happens after you deliver your product. And in most cases, unless you really have leverage, you're not in control of what happens after you deliver your product because, they'll market it, they'll promote it, they'll pick the singles, they'll choose the video team. And unless you have enough leverage, you're not going to be involved in those critical decisions which will make or break a career.
Is there a happy medium, meaning you're trying to get the best for your client, they're trying to get the best, so they're going to say they send over a contract and yo, this contract's bullshit.
Yeah.
You send back a bunch of adjusted things and you try to get it into your favor. Right. Then they got to turn around and say, hey, we want to get into our favor. What is it? Is there a happy medium?
That's every deal. And the happy medium is, we're not going to kill each other. We're going to live with this. We've gotten the best that we can do on both sides. And let's shake and sign and go to work.
Sure.
But that's like every deal.
Any lawyers that want to be lawyers, like yourself, meaning up-and-coming lawyers, people who are already lawyers that are listening to this, or even people who want to go to law school or want to become a lawyer because of some of the things that they heard from you today, what's some advice that you have for them?
If they haven't gone to law school yet and they're looking at law schools to go to, my recommendation for those college students looking to go to law school is just do some research to figure out which law schools have at least a few courses that you can take while you're in law school that'll position you to be a little bit ahead of the curve when you get out of law school if you're going into the entertainment field. And that would include contracts, intellectual property, copyrights, and trademarks. Hopefully an entertainment law course, but a lot of law schools don't have that, so only a small handful do. And then once you get in law school, depending on where you are, if you're in a city that has a music base, then intern, get to work for a law firm. I have law students on a regular basis, and I have for many, many years, decades actually, where I'll take in a law student. I have one now from John Marshall here in Atlanta that comes in 2 days a week. And I'll give her a pile of work, and she'll knock it out because she's getting practical, hands-on experience that you can't get in law school.
Sure.
So that's the pre-law school and the while you're in law school grind. And then once you get out, the most important thing is pass the damn bar.
Yeah.
Because if you can't pass the bar, you can't get licensed and you can't practice. So
Focus
at least for that first 6 months when you get out on studying and passing the bar, getting the bar behind you, and then making your network of contacts so you can get your feet wet and get accepted at some area. And it's going to probably be private practice or a corporation that you wind up working for.
What about negotiation? You think about it, how do people learn how to negotiate? To be a good entertainment lawyer, you have to have good negotiating skills. What do you suggest to somebody who's just getting into business?
On-the-job training.
Yep.
It's really 90% of that is on-the-job training, supplemented by specific tactics through seminars and workshops and conferences.
What's next for you? Besides 35 years deep in the entertainment lawyer business.
Yeah, well, 2 years ago, I launched an online music portal called AskEntertainmentLawyer.com. Okay. And my goal and desire for that was to educate and empower because knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. So, it's not something that we set up that, we did for the purpose of just, cashing out, making a bunch of money in a quick fashion, even though that would be nice down the road. But the idea is to share information. That's what we do on the website. Mm. My book is available on the website. We have contracts, just like, you go to LegalZoom. We're like LegalZoom for music industry contracts on our website.
You're also a professor.
Yeah. I've taught and still do teach copyright and music publishing in the music department at Georgia State University. And I taught entertainment law a number of years ago in New York when I was in New York at Benjamin Cardozo Law School.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I don't want to take any more of your time. First of all, I want to thank you. It's an honor to sit down with you. A lot of information, really, and it's special. Internet, first of all, we're on the road. We're in Atlanta.
Yeah.
We're in Kendall Minter's office where he closed.
Hanging out.
$1 million deals in here. As soon as I walked in, I smelled money. I mean, listen, for those of you who've been listening, there's been a clock going on in the back. That thing's $10,000, okay? Yeah. You understand? Maybe more than that. Is that clock worth?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I was playing around. Are you on social media?
Yes and no. I mean, my real social media, because I'm on Facebook.
Okay.
I use Facebook more for socializing than for business purposes. On the business side, I'm on LinkedIn. But my biggest social media thing basically is my email address. I'm accessible. Our website is really my social media contact. And we spend a lot of time putting content up there and keeping it current and making sure that folks are informed and empowered.
Well, listen, Internet, check out Kendall Minter's Facebook. Check him out. Like I said, I thank you again. The journey is inspiring, man.
Thank you.
Just the
My
clientele
pleasure.
is inspiring. And just your contributions are inspiring. Internet's Kendall Minter. See you next episode. Cheers.
Thank you.
Internets, if you loved what you just heard, do me a favor, please. Go over to iTunes, subscribe, rate. If you mess with SoundCloud, follow us, or Spotify, whatever it is, make sure you subscribe, rate, and leave a comment. It helps us. It helps us look clean in these streets, man. I need your help. Okay, you got all these gems. You're getting all this inspiration. You know, I pour my heart out on these fucking episodes, and I try to bring to you people from all walks of life, whether that be entrepreneurs, athletes, artists, and really go over the journey. No fuck shit, no drama, just real life shit. So if you fuck with the Premium P Show, please head on over to iTunes, subscribe, press that subscribe button, rate, and leave a comment. I don't care if you say, like, yo, Pete, I love the show, or if you say, Pete, go fuck yourself. It's all right. Sometimes it has to be like that. But make sure you go to iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, TuneIn, wherever you get your podcast and listen to your podcast. Subscribe, rate, and leave a comment. Okay? I appreciate y'all. And we'll see you next episode. Cheers.